Welcome back to our channel. We have been on Kofa National Wildlife Refuge as resident RV volunteers for 3 months now. We have 3 weeks left and we haven't sat down for a chat since long before we took this trip. First of all, what's it like to be away from the property for this long?
Makes me a little homesick.
We left Vermont on October 30th, and this is March 6th. So we have been away from home for a very long time. And on the one hand, it's been a rainy, nasty winter up there, so we're not too sad that we've missed it. On the other hand, it's a long time to be away from home. As you may know, if you've seen some of our previous episodes in this series, we have a camping spot here for 3.5 months. And in exchange for the camping spot and a work truck and fuel for the work truck and propane for our RV and a big tank of water to use in the RV and a porta potty, we are putting in at least 24 hours of work each per week minimum for the wildlife refuge. Mostly we've been exceeding that minimum, sometimes by quite a lot. That's voluntary, so we actually both kind of like to stay busy, and it's been a more rewarding trip for us in some ways because we've had responsibilities instead of just being on vacation. It's also been a lot more affordable that way. What's your favorite thing about the desert?
My favorite thing about the desert. Probably at least one of my favorite things about the desert is the fact that even though there's a lot of plant life here, it's very easy to circumnavigate it and walk cross country. I mean, you can walk wherever you want through the desert, and it's easy to do.
I love all the creepy crawly things that are hiding out there, and they really are hiding because it's wintertime, but one by one they are coming out and you can find some interesting stuff. So one of the things that I've been doing, sometimes on the clock, sometimes off the clock, is trying to document the biodiversity out here. So I've been making iNaturalist observations, and my goal is to get to 1,000 before we leave. So I'm up to about 730, and I've got a lot of work to do in the next few weeks. So one of our least favorite things that we've learned about the refuge is something that we already knew, which is people are not always respectful of places like this. What happened here?
Don't want to talk about it.
So we were just flagged down by some campers who told us that there was a wash that was full of human waste in plastic bags. Because not everyone who comes out here and camps in the desert is a responsible adult. But even when it's not quite that egregious, we've found lots of ways that people trash the desert, some of which are obnoxious, like driving off the roads in a wilderness area, and some of which are a little bit less obvious. For example, Mylar balloons. If you have ever had a Mylar balloon and you've lost track of it somehow, I guarantee it has landed in this desert. I'm sure they end up a lot of other places, but we've seen more than our share out here.
The latex balloons, I'm sure, also end up out here, but they end up popping and are so small that we don't see them. But they're still in the environment, and I'm sure birds and rats and everything else get a hold of them. And
what is your favorite job duty that you've performed for the refuge?
So far, my favorite thing is having, and it's not necessarily on this refuge, but for the complex is working on the solar systems, because that's the kind of thing I like to do. That's what I've done for many years. And what's your favorite thing?
My favorite thing that I have done for the refuge is a guided hike program at Palm Canyon, which we featured briefly in one of our past videos. So, Palm Canyon is one of the most accessible and popular hikes on the refuge. So, I've been leading visitors on a weekend afternoon hike each week and talking about the local ecology. And that's been probably the best use of my skills since we've been out here. So that brings us to, oh my gosh. No, that's not going to work. You licking the microphone?
Yeah.
Sorry. You're not invited. We explained in a previous video that we had originally applied for the visitor center position in Yuma, and we were actually very delighted that we ended up out here in the desert in the middle of nowhere.
That's still true.
Yeah, there are some really beautiful things about waking up way out here in the desert, right next to the mountain, and spending basically our whole work week out here in the remote wilderness. But we also have to admit that it can get hard.
Oh, absolutely. Yes, it can be very hard out here. It's isolating. Well, you and I are both introverts, but I think you and I both still need a social network and people we talk to and things we do separately, and it's just very, very isolating to be out here, especially when even the people we work with and for are far away. We don't get to see them often. We don't even get to talk to them very often. It's it can be hard.
Yeah, so on the one hand, we're pretty far away from family and friends, and several months have gone by that we've been far away. So that's kind of starting to catch up with us a little bit. But also, since we live in this small trailer and we work together for our volunteer duties and we work together to produce the YouTube videos, it can be a bit much. So let's talk about something that we wish we had known before we came. So it never occurred to us in this type of work camping arrangement to bring tent camping equipment. But Kofa Refuge is so large and there are so many places to explore in the backcountry.
There are plenty of jobs out here that by the time you get to where you're going and it takes half a day to get there, it'd be very difficult to do the job and get back at a reasonable hour. So you really need to be able to camp out where the job is, and you can work the half the day you get there and then work the next day and maybe come home, or might have to spend a couple of days.
What is something that visitors should know before they come?
If you're coming specifically to explore Kofa, if you want to explore all of Kofa, you absolutely will have to have a Jeep or some high lifted four-wheel drive vehicle, because there are very few roads here. Most of the roads you could do without a four-wheel drive for the most part, but there's always a place here and there that you need four-wheel drive.
And the high clearance is even more important because of
high
the
clearance is
condition.
necessary. You won't get very far without it.
And if you have a high clearance four-wheel drive vehicle and you take it on these roads, you are guaranteed to scratch up your vehicle. One of Charles's favorite new words is
Arizona pinstriping. That's what they call when you start going down these back roads and you have to rub up against all the plants here are either thorny and or very hard and brittle. So when you rub up against them with your vehicle, they don't want to give much, so they will scratch your vehicle very easily.
Which brings me to something else that visitors should know before they come out here. People tend to be afraid of things like
Snakes.
scorpions, snakes. They're worried about the wildlife. And honestly, the wildlife is going to try to get away from you. But what can't get away from you are the plants. And they're the ones that are going to get you. So you have
Almost
to,
all of them have thorns.
or toxins, or both. And you really need to be careful where you're stepping, where you're putting your hands. If you wish to camp on Kofa Wildlife Refuge, you can camp for 14 days out of a calendar year, anywhere within 100 feet of a designated road.
That's camping with some kind of camper wheeled vehicle. If you want to camp in your tent, you can go hiking back wherever you want and camp in a tent, as long as you obey all the other rules, as in not disturbing plants or animals.
But if you're taking a tent further away from the road, you probably want to check in with the office so that they know you're out here, because you won't have a cell signal.
Yeah, if you're going into the backcountry and camping, tent camping, it would be nice if you had some kind of GPS, sat phone, or whatever, something to be able to reach the outside world if something goes wrong. You should absolutely let somebody know exactly where you're going so you can be found.
Other things to be aware of, pretty much the whole refuge is a flash flood area. So if you come in, you want to keep an eye on the weather forecast and make sure that if rain is expected, you're on higher ground. If there's any possibility of rain, you do not want to be anywhere near a wash, but you also may or may not be able to get back out the road that you came in on. So also check the forecast, because if the winds are from the north, you're going to want to park on the north side of the road so that when cars drive by, their dust doesn't go in your windows. And if the winds are coming from the south, you'll want to park on the south side of the road.
You can also park near a spot in the road where there's a wash or a deep dip where people have to slow down. So if you're parked near that point and they're driving by, they have to slow down and there's not as much dust coming through.
So if someone was coming to visit the refuge, what's something they shouldn't miss?
Have we seen everything we shouldn't miss?
So let's start with, if you do not have a high clearance four-wheel drive vehicle that you're willing to get pinstriped. Palm Canyon is the most accessible spot for hiking. If you are willing to walk a little further, one of our favorite places that we go is Horse Tanks, which is a wildlife drinking station that's not too far off the main road. Although to drive very close to it, you would need a high clearance vehicle, but you could actually walk in for, I think, a 6-mile round trip hike if you walk the part that you would otherwise be able to drive with the proper vehicle.
Some of the places I like to see the most are going through anywhere on the map that says a pass, like McPherson Pass or Red Rock Pass. So that means you're going up over the mountain, and most of these passes have very, very rough roads.
So on the one hand, it's a challenge for you to put your vehicle through, and on the other hand, it's probably going to be a pretty good view.
Right, it's very nice views. You go higher up and you can see for miles, literally miles.
We do have at least one more video of our work camping experience on the way. So thanks for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you again soon. Charles, are we getting sick of painting water tanks?
Yep.
Can you say that to the camera?
I don't know about sick of painting, but sick of prepping for sure.
Yeah.
I don't mind the painting.
The good news is there's only so many water tanks around here, and not all of them need painting.
Probably 5 more down this road alone.
That need painting?
Maybe.